Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Space Podcast. My name is Guy Stanley, a director and design consultant at Stansons. I also have the privilege of speaking to key players and influencers within the industry. So today I spoke to Étaín Neary, Group Creative Director and founder of Cast Interiors, a design and build firm based in London and founded just days before the first COVID lockdown. But before we dig in, I want to say thanks a million to all our listeners for the kind feedback and the direct messages that you send. Your support really means a lot, and the reach has been far more than expected. If you do enjoy the show, please follow and drop us a rating, then the algorithm can do its thing. Let's roll. Welcome, Étaín.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So, how did your career start? Because it's gone like that.
Yeah, well, so I started off in architecture. That's something that I've always wanted to do since I was a child. That was something I loved, buildings, interiors, all of that kind of stuff. And I obviously went to university in Ireland and kind of graduated at quite a bad time in the recession, not a lot of jobs, not much going on in Ireland. So I was very fortunate to get a few unpaid internships in Dublin at the time, and ended up working on a few projects, working on some kind of master planning schemes, larger scale schemes, and then lots of kind of smaller niche interior projects that the firm was doing at the time. And I kind of quickly realised that that's what I really enjoyed doing. It's what I was good at. But also to get exposure to interiors kind of required a bit more work experience, because in traditional architectural education, it doesn't focus on that as much.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to get an internship in London. So packed my bags, moved over, worked in London for a few months. And that's kind of where it all started. Doing a lot of residential stuff, between high-end residential, a few one-off properties. But what I actually really enjoyed doing was the reception spaces, the arrival experience, designing post boxes in the lobby of these buildings. And actually there was so much more to it: furniture, lighting, all of that kind of stuff. So that's just something that I really had an interest in. Then I went on to work for a big main contractor in London, because I wanted to understand a bit more about how things are built. I know it sounds counterintuitive. I'm saying I like really small niche projects, and then I work for a massive contractor. But I worked for the interiors fit out team for that contracting business, just to understand more about the process, the buildability, all of that kind of stuff. Being able to draw drawings is slightly different to being able to read drawings well and actually interpret someone's design. And I think a large part of what's accelerated my career is kind of the design and build aspect in the industry and the way things are changing. That, you know, the traditional way of it going step by step, passed over to the contractor after the tendering stage, has changed a lot, and clients tend to get the contractor involved much earlier on. So I had the amazing opportunity to work with incredible design studios, architects, but very early on, like stage 3 forward, and help them say, right, this is the vision, but how do we build it? How do we make it real? How do we realise your vision, your aesthetic, and actually translate that into building? So I had a lot of experience in that, and kind of went from there.
Do you call that technical design?
It could be, but often it's just development. You know, sometimes you've got things that you discover on site. The conditions are different to the way they used to be. Sometimes it's change. Sometimes it's down to product. It's about coordination with furniture. Sometimes it's none of the above, and it is just doing a very technical detail for something that was a concept previously, but it does change.
I know, like, my friend, and I can even picture them now, thinking like architects and designers are the same thing, and they think I'm talking to exactly the same person when I'm talking to an architect and an interior designer. And I've given up trying to tell them that no. An architect and a designer is like literally like saying a brain surgeon and a dentist.
It's so vast, actually, because something that's very interesting for me is being an architect. I obviously, when I did my professional qualifications to get my ARB membership, I was working for a contractor in this quite niche space, whereas most people that were going through the chartership at that time were more traditional architects.
Yeah.
But I think something that's interesting for me is that the role of the architect has completely changed. And personally, I think it's for the better that the profession is diversifying. People are getting specialisms. Even I look at all of the people. I did my part 3 studied at the Bartlett at UCL in London. And so having had my primary education in Dublin and then coming across to see the differences was quite interesting. And actually, because the economy is so big here, you can afford to have all of these different specialisms. I've got friends who are in master planning, town planning. I've got friends who are now sculptors. I have friends who do massive scale residential schemes. I've got a friend working on a prison. I've got a friend who designs furniture, but they're all architects. Yeah. So I think it's great that actually you can lean into anything, that it's a very, very worthy degree that can put you down any route. But the traditional sense of architecture is very different to interior design, as you picked up on. That a lot of it is to do with, structures, coordination, how everything stands up, how it all works, how the picture puzzle comes together. There's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of credentials that you have to achieve to do that, whereas interiors is a lot more of the, kind of the person and how they feel. And the way the space comes together. But, I think all the skills are transferable.
Yeah, I was going to say, what skills do you still use today from your architecture background, like with a more interior focus?
Hopefully all of it. Hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. But I would say it's the scale, understanding the scale of a person, a thing, a doorway, being able to read drawings, look at something. I can look at something and know it's wrong in seconds, or that's going to feel awkward, or that's going to feel big. And I think that understanding of the size and scale and dimensions of things in 3D by looking at a sketch or a floor plan is really, really useful, because obviously in interior design, it's very much about a person standing, a person sitting, two people sitting beside each other. What's an awkward, weird, uncomfortable distance to have people sitting beside each other? Yeah. What feels natural, what's intuitive, and what's not? So I think that's definitely something that I've pulled through. It's really interesting, actually. We say in the office all the time that drawing and design is so personal, right? So I've got an amazing team of loads of fabulous interior designers, and they do loads of the great projects that we're responsible for. So they're worth a mention. But it's always funny when someone puts a drawing in front of me to have a look or to comment on. I can always tell who's drawn it. And I think that's really interesting. You say, I can tell straight away which one of the designers has done this floor plan, or who's done this elevation, or who's done this palette. And that's, I think, the fundamentals of the whole industry, is having an identity and a personality and doing something slightly different. And they all have their own different style, and that's influenced by their education, their backgrounds. Some of them are architects, some aren't architects, some are engineers, and how they tackle a problem with that education is really interesting.
Wow. And I suppose that then helps you put them on the right projects, as the creative director, like when a project comes in, like this is one for X and this is one for Y.
Absolutely.
Not to number your stuff.
No, 100%. That it's so true. And things come in and I'm sit there and I'm like, I know these two are going to be fighting over this one. It's right up their street. Other people will be like, oh, I'd rather not. That's not for me. And I think it's so important, it's not about project comes in, client wants something, you do it on this day, submit it on that day. That's not how we operate. Mm-hmm. It's really trying to match up the right people with the right projects. We've got some members of the team who work with specific clients because they've got an amazing relationship. They've done stuff before together. They like how each other works. And we try to match people accordingly. Some people are really interested in furniture. We've obviously, within the group of CAS, we've got CAS Living, which does living asset, built to rent, large scale, interior kind of residential furniture. And in my team specifically, there's a few people who really love doing that. And it's just the diversity of what we do. So one day they'll be working on a large scale kind of base build construction project. Another time they'll be working on fit out. Then they'll be working on the residential furniture. And it's just nice to have that tapestry, that it's not the same day in, day out. Yeah. Other people love doing the same types of things. So it's a big part of my role to make sure that they can excel and succeed in their careers, is putting on jobs that is going to inspire them and things that they're good at.
No, that's
big
great.
part of it.
And Cast Group is a design and build and construction furniture company, which is majority female led.
Yes.
Are you one of the founders?
Yes. Yeah. So myself and Zoe, and obviously our colleagues, Steve and that, but it is the majority share is owned by women, which is obviously a great accolade.
In the construction world.
In the construction world particularly.
Yeah.
We are 36% female, and I think the industry average is about 14%. So that's incredible. It wasn't intentional. It was just a bunch of people who love working together, who had big ideas, wanted to do something different. And we started the company and we happened to be women. But I think what it does is it gives us a competitive edge because of the creativity that breeds. Not because we're women, but because having that really diverse team does the way we tackle problems and ideas, and from an interior point of view, having that balance of how you respond to a brief or how things are done on site or anything along those lines. It really, we can feel the diversity and the kind of the tapestry of stuff that we churn out because of how many people in the company are from diverse
different backgrounds. Yeah. So you set up quite a significant brand, a significant company in the industry, and that's a big player in terms, you've got the diversity. That's excellent, and I love it. How did you what inspired you to set up that brand? Was there any issues in the industry that you saw you wanted to resolve, or was it just hey, let's have a pop, or what made you set up Cast?
I think predominantly it was just doing things a bit differently, doing things a different way. And I know everybody says that, it's kind of the party line. It's to do with not being answerable to people, coming from backgrounds with kind of bigger companies, you need to get a lot of permissions from things. It's difficult to implement change when, for a very good reason, these companies have processes in place and things to do. And we thought, we're doing a great job at this. We see a unique opportunity of working with landlords, asset owners to unlock key assets. And that's kind of the thing that we wanted to do. Was we often get people coming to us and say, we've got this building, we don't know what to do with it, have you got ideas? And it's not anything to do with workplace design at that time, it's just starting these conversations. And we thought that we could actually implement more change from a sustainability point of view, from a social value point of view, if there wasn't a board of directors or people to kind of ask permission of. And so it was bold, that's what, well, we still are, but definitely at the start was, we think this is a great idea. Let's try it. Let's do it. And I think when you're that tiny, you're that little as a company with 3 people starting the business, that you can't fall very far. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That, there's things that you can do. You test things. Some work, some don't. But that was the main thing. And, coming from a contracting background, sustainability was a massive thing for us. In, the Cat A offering, it's just not great for the environment. Furniture's not great for the environment. Fit-out's not good for the environment, on the scale of construction. And so we wanted to come up with ways and ideas to tackle these problems.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to pick up on that because I want to know what ways and how you do that, and how do you, other than just specifying sort of recycled materials on your project, how do you actually be sustainable? Because a lot of people talk about it, but you've got actions that you actually take.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to preface this by saying that, we're doing our best. And I say this to people all the time, and they always look at me strange, going, that's a weird thing to say. But we do everything we can with the information that we've got right now. And I hope that in 3-4 years' time, we look back and laugh and be like, do you remember how sustainable we thought we used to be like 5 years ago, and now what we do? Yeah. But actually, that's part of the journey. That's the process. It's not like we're sustainable, a line in the sand, and that's that. It's we are doing our absolute best right now. And if we can joke about how we are now in a few years' time, well, that's amazing, because it means we've taken steps forward. But in the design and build process, I think it's quite unique in that you have full control of the process from concept, client, their goals, their aspirations through to delivery. So for us, it always starts with design and things down to, what exactly is the brief. Sometimes you'll challenge the brief and say, why do you want to do that? Often they're going to strip out and start again, but you say, right, well, you've got 3 walls and places on this floor plan that we can make this work really well for you as a scheme without stripping it out and starting again. Things like when building, walls, joinery, we delve into what size are the sheets. So if a sheet comes in 1,200 wide and you want to do a 2.5 meter length of something, well, that's wastage. There's offcuts. You need 3 boards to do something so we will modularize everything so that we're getting the most efficient cuts. All of these things kind of filter through. And build the bigger picture. Yes, products, that's great, and choosing these different things, but it's how the design as a whole can all these little elements feed into it. That's quite a big thing of what we do.
Transport as well.
Yeah, so we think you can't truly be sustainable if at the end of a project, where does your site setup go? Where do all of your materials go? Where does your packaging go? It's, of course, there's fantastic partners in the industry who can manage that for you. But from our point of view, we wanted to know everything about where our stuff was being stored, where it was going. So we've got out in Essex, we've got a warehouse, a yard that we consolidate. There's a beautiful office out there that lots of people work at. And for us, it's important that we know where things are coming and going. We can consolidate things. We do deliveries in batches. We don't do runs into town for no reason. So we can really control that process. Mm-hmm. It also means if we're doing a strip out or something for a client that's no longer required, we can keep it. So if they're saying, oh, get rid of those reception chairs, we can say, yeah, no problem. We'll take them back. We'll use them. We'll reupholster them. We'll design them into another project. We'll donate them. But it's really hard to do that if you've only got a beautiful small office in central London, right? So that's quite key to how we operate.
Cast is clearly flourishing, and that's really exciting. What's your vision for the brand, like going forwards? What's next?
It's always an interesting question, because if you asked at the start, it's very different to where we are now, that a lot of it has grown and evolved, and we've come up with ideas, and we've done different things that wasn't necessarily the way we set out. But I think that's the case with any kind of growing business. Mm-hmm. And we are very reactive and very responsive to what's going on around us. So being too rigid, stuck to a plan, I think would hinder any business in their development and their growth.
COVID, for example.
Well, we started the company 3-4 weeks before lockdown. So we started in January 2020, and it was in the news, it was abroad, it wasn't currently in the UK, it wasn't a real problem at that point. And so, we set up the company, we started in earnest, and then we got sent home. So we had a little small office with no windows, very humble little office in a co-working space in the city. And 6 weeks later, we got sent home, and that was it. So it's crazy. There was a small moment of, we've just started a business, and now we don't know what's happening in the world. We don't know what's going on. But it was actually the best thing that ever happened to us. It gave us time to reflect. It gave us time to think about what we wanted to do. We weren't stressing about meeting clients or going for a breakfast or booking meetings in, doing these things. It just became very organic and very natural. There's connections we had in the industry, as everybody does, and we'd say, should we do a Zoom call, have a chat, talk about, how's homeschooling going? How's your family? Just very casual conversations over Zoom. And that kind of really enabled us to pick where we were going, the direction. And we had lots of inquiries and tenders coming in during that process. So it was quite cathartic, actually. We'd speak all the time on Zoom, on the phone, had a great time, did online quizzes like everybody did, and just tried to refine our vision and palette and design and what was our identity going to be, essentially. So that was kind of the start of it. And then as we came out of lockdown towards the summer, we had a few clients who, let's face it, they gave us a shot. And that's a big part of it, that we go on this journey, but we have amazing clients who support us. And I think a lot of big businesses have goals in terms of social value, supporting SMEs, supporting female-owned companies. They have these visions, they've got these aspirations, but actually the governance and the paperwork sometimes can actually preclude any small growing business to actually be part of that, because they said you have 5 years accounts. No, we don't. We've only existed a month, or we've only existed 3 years, or, and it's about having that really transparent conversation and saying, we've got as people 10, 20, 25 years industry experience. We can do the job. It's just under this umbrella, we haven't. And it takes some people who really believe in you, who really want to work with you, who've potentially worked with you previously, or are like, no, our goal is to support these companies. We want to see what this journey is. We want to see how you could do something different to what we've experienced before. And so, grateful for all those opportunities. And I guess we didn't do a bad job. So it started with small 50 grand, 200 grand, really modest projects, and then did a great job. And we got more opportunities as the portfolio grew. People get to know who you are. People contact us saying, we've seen your design on LinkedIn, or we've seen your photos on Instagram, or we've been around a building in Soho and we loved the design. We asked the building manager who'd done it. And it kind of went from there.
Really exciting. I got a real sense of like entrepreneurship and energy coming through, and that's kind of built that kind of that brand what it is today.
Yeah, it was incredible. And we were saying, picking the name, that's a personal favorite,
Okay.
cast.
How?
We were just we had a lot of rosé. We had a few bottles of rosé. We were trying to come up with a nice idea of what we could do. And we quite like the name. It's the collective pronoun for a pair of falcon. So it's a cast of falcons. So, and a falcon is a symbol for kind of strength and femininity and that kind of stuff. So it just seemed to fit.
I never knew that.
We were just two birds drinking rosé, and, now we've got a pink bird logo. But yeah, that's how it came from, a cast of falcons. So all of these interesting, experiences, things that we did.
So nice to hear. Thanks for sharing that. A question I've got for a lot of people in your position is, what is the purpose of the office?
Well, I think it's all comes back to the business, and it all comes back to what are you trying to achieve in that space. And actually, it's a hard question to answer, because no one size fits all. Yeah. It absolutely doesn't. And it's a cultural thing, I would say, is the biggest thing for us, is that what does your business do? How do your people live in your space? What are you trying to show off about your company? Mm-hmm. What drives you to have people together in the same place? Mm-hmm. And that's the most fundamental part of it. And I think often you'll ask that question of clients, what is the purpose? What is the brief? And it's often the first thing they say actually turns out that's not what they're looking for. After you have a conversation, you go, okay, well, actually, that's not the challenge you're having. The challenge you're having is X, Y, and Z, and it's a completely different solution. So it's about camaraderie, I would say. We're a big advocate of the office. We design them for a living. It would be remiss of us to not inhabit one, when that's something that we work with on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. It gives us also, what the challenges are. We know it's a nightmare when you don't have enough recycling bins, or this super boring operational part of it as well. You need to have the bigger picture. But a lot of what we find is it's about retaining and attracting the best staff. That seems to be the biggest thing for the people in these decision-making positions who are deciding what kind of developments they have for the office in their companies. And a lot of it is, people can be selfish these days in a good way. You pick where do you want to commute? Where do you want to live? What kind of job do you want? people are highly educated as a society. Hopefully that will keep filtering through. But I think we're in a position where people are making really educated choices. It's not so much, not everybody, but people want to strive to have a job in a place that means something to them. And I think companies are really recognizing that you have to put something in place. And I think that's very different to 10 years ago. We're a place, we had beanbags, we had slides, we had ball pits, and, that's great, that's fun, that's unique, and things go through phases. But that was kind of the cool attraction to people. Now it might be something different. It might be people want to spend an hour speaking to friends, collaborating, asking different questions, working with different disciplines. They might want to spend 2 hours in a phone booth working really quietly. They might want to go into the boardroom and have a big meeting with their whole team. And the reality is the office is so important because it breeds culture and ideas and creativity. And yes, I'm a designer, but creativity has to take place in every business. If you're in finance, if you're in operations, if you're in tech, creativity is the fundamental to how businesses grow and develop. And you need to have a space where that flourishes.
Yeah, no, I so agree. I'm going to circle you back a bit because you said people might come to you with a challenge, and actually that challenge, when you unpick it, it turns out to be a different challenge. How do you unpick that?
It's conversation, usually. And we love to bring people into our office. Obviously it's a bit of a showroom. We show off different products, things that we do. And I think the minute you walk into our office, you can feel the energy. Like, it's such a vibrant space. It is noisy, sometimes too noisy, but that's amazing. We've got small rooms where people can go and focus and do other work, but it's that energy that people can feel. And we kind of explain to people, we want to speak to you face to face. Getting an email of, we need 3 more rooms, we need a reception, we need this, we need that, that's absolutely no problem. But we need to unpick that because we're the workplace expert. And we're trying to give them the best space for their requirements. So that's a really big thing. Often, people, the big meeting room challenge that everybody always doesn't have enough rooms. And it is a problem. People are on call. So actually now you need more rooms more than ever, because if some people are at home, people are on site, the way businesses operate, not everyone's going to be sitting around the table at the same time. But that doesn't mean you need 10, 8 people rooms, and it's about having, again, always go back to this term, the tapestry of spaces. It's having loads of different spaces under the one roof that people can just inhabit how they want, how they feel. We're not prescribing this is what has to take place in this room, but it's an idea of a really nice space that you can do what you want. You can speak to a friend, you can eat your lunch in there, you can do whatever. And it's by asking questions. What does your business do? What do your people do? What are the cornerstones of your company? It all comes back, right? There's no denying it costs a lot of money. Fit out furniture, it's an investment for these people. And you're obviously in a place where you're investing all of this time, this effort, and this money in this project. There's reasons for that. There's goals, there's drivers, what are those? Yeah. And that's really, really important. And to see if we can play it back to them a different way, that they say, this is the problem. We say, right, that's the challenge, but have you considered this? Have you thought about this? And it's really interesting. Actually, often you'll get people who say, we don't have enough desks, but actually that mightn't actually be the case. That they have a lot of desks, but actually people choose to work around more collaboration tables on their laptops together. So it's seating positions, but it's not necessarily a fixed desk, or vice versa. So I think it's really teasing out that the brief is the best place to start.
No, I think that's interesting because you've done it like multiple days a week, right?
Yeah.
And for myself, it's not what I'm doing all day, every day, right? So I think that's interesting. If you were to write a brief for a client, what are like the top 3 things you'd tell them to look at?
I think that's a really difficult question because one of our absolute fundamentals is that we don't write a brief for anyone. We interpret your brief. We develop your brief. We challenge your brief. We come up with ideas. But regurgitating to you what you want is not how you create amazing spaces.
Okay.
But I think there is a few fundamentals. It's really, really basic data, which you got to have. How many square feet do you want? How many people do you have? All of the facts and figures, very useful, but that's just a starting point. Things around how often do your staff come into work? Is there a 3-day week? Is there in the office? Is it flexible working? Is it not? Is it 5 days a week? And most of the time they will say, well, currently a lot of people work from home, but we want people to come to an office that they like, and maybe they'll want to do 4 days a week. That's a massive thing. There's huge corporates who are now going away from the work from home scenario. Productivity from a research and data point of view, productivity is lower. That has been proven in the last few months. There's some big organizations have come out with statements to that effect. But also for mental health, well-being, going to the office is so much more than turning up, sitting at a desk and doing your work. It's about your walk in the morning. It's about missing your train and being in a terrible mood because of that. But then other days you might bump into a friend you haven't seen in a while. The other day I saw there was like a tiny glimmer of a daffodil coming up, which, inspired me. I was like, yes,
it's a small thing.
The mornings are getting brighter, but it's part of a routine. It's a very human way of managing your day. So to understand that from their point of view.
Yeah.
And then the key thing, commerciality, nothing's free. Nothing is done without reason. These are businesses, landlords, they have to make money. They've got investors. They might be funds. They might be, people going into a merger. There's absolutely always a reason why they're doing it. And that's the key thing to understand. Is there a change in management? Is there a rebrand going on? Have they done a staff survey and everyone is like, we hate this office. It's terrible. It's sterile. I can never get it. That people moan about things. That is so fundamental. If you're spending your day in these places and it's not enjoyable, it's not comfortable, of course you're not going to want to go there. So those are the key things. But everyone is so different.
Yeah.
Of how they tackle it.
Absolutely. Do you find there's a difference in requirement dependent on location?
I think less so than it used to be. I'd say 5-10 years ago, there was quite the in-town office, the out-of-town office, the regional office was quite a different thing. Mm-hmm. I think now, no. And actually, it's an amazing thing because people just want to actually do the best for their people. And if you're working in a regional office, your needs and requirements might be slightly different to, that of someone in central London, where it's transport or how you get there or your route to work, all of those kind of logistical things. Mm-hmm. But there's no difference in importance. There's no difference in the brief. What the challenge might be different that they're trying to tackle. Yeah. Often regional offices there might be more people, there might be more dense, whereas a central one might be more client facing, or it might be the other way around. And so it's just understanding what the requirement is. But from a design point of view, I think any good designer can make a place amazing no matter where it is, no matter what the budget is. And actually it's those challenges and parameters breed the best designs. If someone gives you a blank piece of paper and endless amounts of money, I don't think it wouldn't be the best design I ever did if that was the case. It's tackling problems and challenges and having an idea that ends up not working for whatever reason. It's always breed something better.
What are the typical challenges you get?
In terms of challenges, it's about creating something that works for everybody and everyone needs is different. So a big part of that is making sure that what we do is inclusive for people. So it's around we do a lot of sensory rooms, neurodiverse spaces, gardens, biophilia, quiet rooms, auditoriums that people have different needs and different requirements. And it's about creating a space where everyone's included and can have those kind of things. Challenges for us from a technical point of view is often around engineering, statutory requirements. That's not a challenge. It's just something that you absolutely have to do. It's for the wellness of everybody. Mm-hmm. but it's around making sure that your air volumes are right, the temperature is nice, the comfort is right. So I would say that the engineering integration with the way the space looks is absolutely important. You know, I can design something that looks amazing, that's going to be up for an award. And if the people are in there, they're freezing cold, sweating, not enough fresh air, acoustics are terrible, no one's going to remember you for your beautiful design and your nice sofa and your reception. All they're going to moan about is the way they feel, how they inhabit it is just, they don't like it. It's not comfortable. And that's one of the absolute key things to get right. Lighting, daylight, all of these kind of things. That's the challenge, is tying all of it together to be one coherent scheme that really touches every corner.
And how should people feel in a space?
Like they want to be there.
Yeah, fair.
I think. Or that it's serving them in a way that they want to be served on that day at that time.
Yeah.
You know, if there's often times where you want to be at your desk, you want to be chatting to somebody, you want to engage with people, you want to say, who wants a coffee? Who wants a tea? Let me go to the kitchen. And then you end up with 15 cups of coffee to make. But there's times that you want to do that. There's other times where you know you've got something really important that you need to focus on. Yeah. There might be times that we have a great apprenticeship program at CAS, is that you want to, I love that element of it, the kind of sharing of knowledge and learning, and you might want to be with one of the graduates or one of our trainees and teach them something, speak about something different, learn from them. That's very different to being at your desk. Picking fabrics, picking finishes. Often our team go upstairs and where we have our sample showcase area in the office, and they're just, you can hear them roaring laughing from downstairs. It's amazing. And they're basically challenging each other. And they'll say, why did you pick that colour? And they'll explain the whole project and go between, or do you prefer this or do you prefer this? Doing all of the CGIs, the renderings, you know, it takes a village, particularly in our office. And there's people, and often they'll be gathered around a screen looking at something. And then there is the fundamentals of running a business, how we operate, you know, making sure that we have all of the right processes in place, that we're in the realm of construction. You know, there's things from a health and safety point of view. There's governance things. There's sometimes you need 10 people in a formal boardroom to have a serious meeting about one of those things. So it's just having all of these spaces where people can do what they need to. And if they feel happy and comfortable in any of those spaces, that's how it is. And personally, I don't want someone's like, oh, I love that room, that's my favorite room. Well, that's amazing, but I'm always intrigued as to why, you know, why that's their favorite space in the office. And often it's because that person has a preference for being in the buzz and the atmosphere, or somebody has a preference for putting their earphones in, being in a more quiet space. And so often it's about how they feel, not about the look and feel of that particular corner of the office that they want to be in. But I think it's being comfortable, being happy to sit there. You know, I always say, if you're having a chat, you're speaking to someone, the gauge for me is if someone's sitting there and they get up, make a coffee and go back, that's someone who's comfortable and happy in that space that they're in, because it's somewhere they want to return to.
Yeah, I must admit, I agree with you. I would love to, if someone said to me, I love that space, I'd be like, why? You just want to know why. Yeah. Like, what is it that changes it? And it can be so many things, from the acoustics, from the lighting, from the textures, from the colour. Different people respond to colour depending on, obviously, the task they're doing.
Yeah.
And the whole, like, the enclosed or the open feeling. There's so much. I mean, you talk about space from an architectural background, and I totally agree with you. Perception and that whole feeling of space really changes how we take in a space, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think goes down from being in your house, being anywhere you've been, you know, school, education, everyone's experience of buildings is very different, you know, just the way of how they grew up, where they were educated, where they worked, where they had a part-time job when they were 15, 16, where all of these types of buildings that people interact with. What is your train station like, your local train station? Is it a small village? Where all of these things contribute to how you react and how you feel.
Yeah.
And so it's impossible to say, but I think, the coffee test of, does someone make a coffee and come back to that same place? That's a gauge of comfort and interaction with that as a place. And it probably changes 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Depending on mood, how you're feeling.
And hopefully it does, because hopefully you're doing 10 different tasks and therefore using 10 different spaces, right?
Absolutely.
So when we're designing spaces, how can we be more considerate for mental health?
I think it's a great question. It's something that's very important and topical, and not that it's an on-trend topic. It's not. It's just becoming more acceptable to talk about, which is amazing. But I think we've got big steps to take. There's what's really great is that there's a lot of people who have that as part of their brief. And actually, these companies are recognizing that it's something that needs to take place. But I think mental health is such an umbrella term for so many different things about how people are feeling and reacting. And so we're not professionals, who deal with this on a medical level, but it's about creating places that people feel safe to, first of all, most importantly, have the conversation. If you've got formal meeting rooms with boardroom tables and chairs and big shiny flat screen TV, you might be less inclined to have a conversation with your line manager or a colleague or a friend, because it's just not the environment where you might have that chat. And so it's having places that are conducive to it, where you can offer that bit of support. As a business, we've got loads of initiatives that tackle that, but that's definitely from kind of an employer point of view, and initiatives of how we deal with that, asking questions. But that's more a behavioural thing, not a design focused thing. But having spaces like neurodiverse spaces. We've got in our office rooms that you can go into that are quiet. You can dim the lights. You can put the blinds down. You can lift the blinds. We have meeting rooms that have sofas and armchairs in them, not tables. We have a room it doesn't have a glass door on the front. There's so many different things, but I think first and foremost, it's about making people comfortable so they can have that conversation. And it's a personal thing. It's a human interaction thing. It's how you can help, how you can reach out. And from a workplace point of view, that starts with having somewhere that's safe and comfortable and being able to have that chat. Another thing which is quite interesting is the island, the kitchen island. I think the world revolves around the kitchen island, and it's almost like the conversation around having difficult, challenging conversations in the car. When your parents when you were growing up and they had something bad to tell you, or you had something bad to tell them, or there was a difficult conversation to be had, that looking someone in the eye can be really challenging and difficult and hard to kind of say how you feel. So we really champion the kitchen island as somewhere that all of these conversations can take place. Not necessarily in a public forum, but being able to sit beside someone, or being able to talk whilst you turn around, make a cup of coffee and turn back. Or you might say something that's upsetting you or bothering you, or you might have to take a deep breath to say something particular to your friend, that you can go and open the fridge. That it's having this setup that enables people to have conversations, that not necessarily in a really formal way.
It's like they say, you have the best conversations when you're going for a walk with someone, isn't it? It's like you're side by side and you've got the walking, which is obviously releasing good endorphins anyway.
Yeah.
And makes people super comfortable and they're more open. And I think you're kind of creating that within an office, which is lovely.
Yeah. And a place where people can go. We're lucky we've got an amazing roof terrace at the office, and we've got an allotment. So that's something that's great, that we grow herbs, fruit, veg, all of that kind of stuff. We make lunch in the office every day for everybody. And in the summer, we use some of those herbs, those different things that we try our best to incorporate into the menu and the food and what we're serving on those particular days. We grow mint. Sometimes there will be a mojito hat on a Friday that we're trying to use from our gardens, but having places that are just different. You're sitting in the fresh air, you're in the sun, it gives you a different feeling. And that's very important, I think, for us to have that outdoor space, that fresh air. But as a problem, it's something that employers really need to consider. Yeah. But for me, it's about having the conversation and not being the silent, unspoken thing. And the only place you can have a conversation like that, that's challenging, or someone's in a difficult place, is to have somewhere secure, safe, comfortable, that they can have it in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think it comes down to culture and a company's culture and how open they are and embracive they are and diverse they are, all that type of thing, which you can't control as a designer. You can't tell a company what their culture needs to be.
No.
You can only work with what your given essentially and just do the best you can for it. So I do think from a workplace manager, HR, leaders in a company need to be mindful of it first and foremost, and then obviously it will filter down and come, and you can use that kind of leadership and design it in and make it a thing and make it a really beautiful space that brings their values to life.
Yeah, and I think we can influence culture to a certain degree. You know, if you have, this is part of the bigger conversation around bringing people back to the office and being involved. It can be lonely working from home. You know, there's a lot of people who, a huge amount, it's very expensive to buy a property, particularly anywhere, you know, near London. People are in flat shares, people live with friends, people might live with a partner, people might have a child. It's hard for them to work at home. There could be loneliness, and all of that is so difficult to gauge on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and the culture of, I'm just popping off now, jumping off now, bye guys, that it's so hard to know where someone's mental state is when you don't see them regularly. So having an office, but also the flip side of it, if you've got a terrible office and it's somewhere that you don't want to be, you'd rather be at home. I completely get it. Mm-hmm. So it's about creating somewhere that people want to go. So that's the first step, getting people together, getting them congregating, getting them having a chat, an informal conversation. And then that breeds a culture of sharing and listening, most importantly. And people want to come back, want to be in that space. It's better than having people feeling isolated. So you can give some cultural empowerment for sure. And we've done a lot of projects that are about culture with some of our clients. And it's all about the line of sight, you know, and the lack of, for better or for worse. So the line of sight, being able to see 100 desks in a straight line, not great. Having walls everywhere, not being able to see anything else, also not great. So it's how you manage the open plan cellularization challenge. That's a massive part. So we always say we don't advocate for a formal reception desk. We kind of call it touchdown, concierge, reception bar, welcome bar, because what we've found is that from projects we worked on previously, the girl or guy who might be managing the reception desk, it's so isolating. It's such a lonely place to be. Often they're around a corner. Everyone they're engaging with might be a stranger. That sense of culture, having one person quite isolated from the rest of the team, is not something that we should be advocating for. You know, having somebody on their own all day in a certain place. So we try to tackle that in a different way, that there might be a bank of 6 desks where the front of house team members would be able to see the front door. They'll be able to access it. There'll be a nice bar, podium, somewhere that they can stand, check people in and out. Completely able to fulfill their role, but just feel more part of the team, that they're included. And having those lines of sight, I think, is really, really important. As well as having kind of nooks, smaller places and larger gathering space. That's something that we always try to look at.
That's really interesting. I must admit, I'd never considered a receptionist who could be a vulnerable person sitting on their own at the front of a building, on their own, and meeting strangers one after the other after the other. Yeah,
and there's strangers coming in, but also everybody who leaves. That often, we're all in a rush, right? Central London, we're all busy. Everyone's in a rush to go somewhere. And so it might be when you're leaving the office, you might be like, see you later, I'm off, running out the door. And so the people you do know are brushing past you. And it's something that we don't enjoy, we don't do. We try to have that conversation with lots of people, and nobody's ever resisted it, you know. Often challenges formalities around security, financial institutions. It's a role. You can't not have it. Yeah. But there's really clever ways in which you can fulfill the function, but have that person as part of the team. Yeah. But also have your guests arriving and feeling the culture, feeling part of the team. Yeah. That it's not you're sat there and then you're rushed into a room and the door is closed. These are people who are engaging with your business, you know, whether they're somebody coming for an interview, whether it's a client, that they are there to see what your business is doing, how they experience you. And so the front of house, back of house thing, I don't think there's a need for it.
No.
I think being visible, being transparent it should be seen.
When I see a welcome bar, I'll think of you.
There you go.
And I also hope I get a drink at the welcome bar.
Yes, absolutely.
Like a champagne on arrival.
We could arrange that. But yeah, it's something that is, often forgotten.
Very fresh thinking. I really appreciate it. And then either for a member of the team or a client or a visitor coming in, they will feel the culture more because the people will be there.
They can experience
energy
it. That's
rather than coming into this like sterile cold space.
Yeah.
There's not. The person is obviously the primary reason why you started this.
Yeah.
But it's actually got much wider reaching benefits.
Yeah, and I think if you have a bit more of a transient reception where you're greeted, you have that formal process. But we've got some amazing kind of collaborations that we do that. Our reception is it's a showcase. First of all, we don't like enclosing the reception. When you come into our office, you can hear laughing, roaring, giggling, typing. There's such an atmosphere that's created, and we want people to experience that. We're transparent with how we operate. We have no problem with anyone coming in and listening in or seeing how we're doing things or having a look around. It's great. We enjoy sharing that with people. That's what makes us different, and that's what makes people attracted to the charm of Cast and how we do things. That it is always quite surprising to people. They're like, oh, just having all these conversations and there's people everywhere, and it's a nice thing. We've also got some really cool things that we do. We've got loads of artwork that we've in collaboration with Creative Debuts, a company we partner with a lot. We did for International Women's Day. We got artworks commissioned that were made by women who've got art studios within a 10-kilometre radius of the office, which is great. And we had a presentation. We set up the office like a gallery. People were able to come. People can buy the artworks. We've got QR codes on every piece of art in our office. Has a QR code that you can scan. And if you just happen to be in the office, you can scan it and you can go buy that piece of artwork or a different piece of artwork. And it's supporting the community, particularly women in this instance, but it does change. We have different themes of people we work with, and that's all over our reception. And the amount of times people come in and they're like, I love that piece of art, or I've scanned this code, or I didn't know what that was. We have our entire reception furniture. By reception, I mean welcome area. So the soft seating element of your arrival into our office, it's all remanufactured product. So not a single piece of furniture in that reception is new or purchased. It was things that we took from somewhere else, or we were doing a strip out and the client was saying, we don't want anything to go to landfill. We want things to be reused, donated, whatever. So we had in our warehouse in Essex, we had stock of things and we designed it in. We said, wouldn't that be lovely here? What if we powder coated that leg? What if we changed the fabric? What if we left it as it is? And it's kind of a vintage piece. We have QR codes in the reception that if you scan it, it says, did you know I used to be a red chair with a chrome leg? And you can look at it and visibly see that that's not what it looks like anymore. And so it's the welcome and the arrival to an office.
I love that your vintage furniture, A, it's vintage, and B, that you can, hey, I used to be a red chair with chrome legs, and it's clearly a black chair with wooden legs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Can that play a much bigger part in large fit-outs?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it a lot of work though?
Absolutely. It's a huge amount of work, but if you're serious about sustainability and the future and circularity and well-being and the future, nothing's too hard work, right? If that's the direction we're going in.
Oh, I agree.
I think it's something that's absolutely worthwhile. We, from a furniture point of view, what's great about design is that it's the here, it's the now, it's the requirement. There's trends. I'm not afraid of a trend. If I see something twice and I'm like, I like that, I'm going to look at doing that. Not often, not every time, but that's absolutely fun. Colour palettes, things that are on trend, things you see on Instagram, fashion. There's a big trend of things on the runway coming into interior line, and it always follows about 18 months later. You'll see the big catwalk shows that things come in, whether it's pattern, whether it's a colour, always filters through into interiors. So that's nothing to be ashamed of. That the things happen in certain maybe I'll use them as decorations. But that the trends are something that are always going to exist, and you have to embrace, and it's different. I'm sure everyone's seen an avocado toilet bathroom set somewhere. Maybe it will come back, maybe it won't. But leaning into a trend and something that's in vogue right now, it is not an issue. What I will say about that is that the lifespan of a good manufactured piece of furniture long outlives a trend or a fashion or its requirement. Everyone's always going to have a requirement for a sofa, an armchair, whatever it might be. But people won't have the requirement for it in that colour or in the style that it's in. Great furniture products made well, made to last. They last longer than 5 years. So why are we throwing furniture out? That you could have a really well-made chair that has a 20-year lifespan at least, and that could have 3, 4, 5 different fabrics on it through its life cycle. Yeah. Creating a lifestyle. Yeah. But it's really important that things just shouldn't be ousted because they're no longer needed or they're no longer in fashion. And that's how you can really keep reusing things and recycling them back in. We've done loads of schemes. We only put anything in that's appropriate, right? We're not going to say have 2 armchairs because you can reupholster what you've got. If they've got a requirement for a table and chairs or a sofa, we're not going to suggest that they have armchairs. So it's fundamentally what you need to do in that space, but it feeds into everything, and you wouldn't know. The craftsmanship is incredible. We partner with a few companies who work on reupholstering, and it's not a dying art because I think it's something that is coming back because we need to do it. Yeah. But it's something that we can't let go of. It's such an amazing craft that's good for us. It's thought-provoking. It gives you creative freedom. I would often say that there's sometimes parameters with furniture, that there's certain fabrics that those companies worked with, different things that you can and can't do. And often you can remanufacture a chair in fabrics and in colours that it doesn't exist in. If you bought it new, you couldn't use those finishes. But when you redo something, you can do it in anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I do think that is definitely going to be something. I do think also that people need to be mindful that it's a longer process and we cannot rush the design because we need time to find those products. And then when the decision-making process comes, we need to realise that these things aren't available for always, like if they're on eBay, for example. And but when we're buying furniture, there is truly timeless pieces that don't date. Yeah. That we can use and we can incorporate into designs. Like you say, they last 20 years and they shouldn't need any change, if you like. They can just be as they are.
As they are. Yeah. So there's loads of different degrees to it. There's things that we do a really great deep clean on, steam them, any touch-ups required, and then it goes back in the way it just looks the exact same. Then you've got reupholstering, which is quite simple, leaving the frame the way it is. It's reupholstering and changing the colour of the frame. And then there's restuffing. So, if there's something that visibly you've had some large arses in over the years and it's got a dint in it, you can repad it, change it, make it look new. So there's loads of different levels of intervention. And then there's just things that they're visibly not new, but it's a nice piece of furniture and it's perfect for the scheme. It's got a story behind it. It's eclectic. There's no harm in that either. But I don't think we'll never be out of the requirement for new furniture, And so this isn't that nobody should buy anything new. That's not how it is. We've had really positive conversations with loads of UK furniture manufacturers. And people seem quite positive about this because actually it's an amazing accolade for them that we'll always need new, but it's having that badge of our product is so well made, it's so sustainable, it's so well put together, it's stylish, it's unique. that our product can be remanufactured. That's a really big selling point. So you might buy something and you might pay a premium for it being made in the UK or made a certain way. But actually, if you can use that product for the next 20 years in different guises, spend the money. You could buy something that can't be reupholstered, is not made very well, has a 2-year warranty, and you might buy that chair 10 times over, which ends up more expensive. So it's thinking a lot more longer term. It is something that we need to get our heads around. And for it to be a collaboration with old and new. And again, I said fashion will never go. There will always be the requirement for a new design, a new chair, a new product, a launch of something interesting. But for everything that exists, keep it in circulation.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And a lot of this is just common sense. We don't need any education. We can just tell, like, oh, this isn't going on this journey logistically. It's not using these materials, like physically, and it's not using this energy. So grand, like every win-win. You can tell, can't you? Do you think sometimes like certificates are a bit overrated, or is there a need for them?
I think there's a need for them in the sense that there's a need that we have an understanding. We need to know where things came from. We need to be able to prove what we're being told, prove what we believe. I think education, being knowledgeable in what you're presenting, what you're putting forward, really understanding what you're selling. Absolutely, there's a requirement for it. If it should be a very, very detailed paperwork exercise, I don't know. I don't know what value that would hold. I also think, coming back to what I spoke about at the beginning, as Cast, we were a small fledgling of a company. We had support from people. We were an SME. We didn't have endless amounts of resource. We didn't have endless amounts of time. We didn't have endless amounts of money. In fact, we had no money. So being able to do the formality for some businesses is really challenging. If you turn over £50 million a year and you have a sustainability department and you have all of these people with information, and that's amazing, that's incredible, that's something that they should be doing, but it shouldn't preclude smaller artisan brands because they don't have the resources to do the same thing. I think that's where the danger is, that some really great businesses will struggle because they can't come up with that information and that data. But do I think we need to know chain of custody, modern slavery, sustainability, all of those things? We have to know where everything's coming from. That is a fundamental fact. But I think there needs to be wider thought and consideration in the industry around how that's delivered as a transparent message to not impact the smaller furniture dealers, the smaller product dealers. Innovation, you can't hinder that by putting this process in. But there's a place for it.
And I think there is a there is a call for certain certification, which is quite heavy for potentially for a small brand, or even like someone coming out of university that's like discovered a use for mycelium, recycled glass or something like that, and they can't necessarily get those certifications because it's very expensive, time consuming. They're putting their time and money, energy into actually the development, not proving their development. And there just needs to be a space for them too, because they could very likely will be the next big thing.
Correct.
That's where it's going to come from.
Yeah. It's about opportunity. It's about people going in the same direction. I think there's loads of our sustainability initiatives we share openly because sustainability shouldn't be commercialized. It shouldn't be giving you a commercial edge or you're going to win this tender because you do something so sustainable. If you fundamentally believe that it's something that it's a challenge that we're tackling and we're going in the same direction, you're not going to change the world as one person, one company, one designer with an initiative. If you've got a great idea and you're doing something that's above and beyond, which is what we do day in, day out, you have to share it. Because if hundreds of people are doing the same thing as you, it's not a secret. It should be shared. And so I can imagine a place where there would be bigger brands collaborating with smaller brands and taking them on that journey and giving some assistance, but also clients and the purchaser having information around, okay, this is what it is, but this is what it takes to get these accreditations. And so to not get any horses out of the race because they don't have a piece of paper. I think that's not how an economy works. It's not how the best innovations come to be. And that needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah, and there's these simple ways to improve the journey the product's been on, and the materials that is used and the energy. There's simple ways to prove that without having to necessarily go through like a rigorous sustainability certification or an EPD or something like that. There is simple ways that you can still like show what you're doing.
I think EPDs are very useful bits of information, and it's very clever data and science and knowledge and information that goes into creating those. I think it's definitely got a place, but it's got a place in a wider industry that focuses on sharing of knowledge and sharing of information. What we do around calculating carbon on all of our projects as a baseline, we do that on every single job. It's with available data, our own data. We've, over the last 4 years, created loads of our own information, loads of our own data. We've got industry benchmarks. There's so much resources available that by sharing that knowledge and that information means that you don't necessarily have to have that accreditation, but you still can absolutely know what your impact on the world is. You can define what that is by using all of this information that's available. But if people gatekeep and they don't share what they're learning and their knowledge, it becomes more challenging. So I think it needs to be an understanding that it's information to be shared, not information to be profited off.
You're doing loads, but has it been a perfect ride or have you made mistakes?
Loads of mistakes, but I don't like the word mistakes because you wouldn't be here if those things didn't happen. You know, there's people we met along the way that, you know, could have done without meeting. There's things that we did that wasn't perfect. We became experts in things very quickly, but nothing is seamless. And so a lot of mistakes were made. I think for me, one of the biggest things was having conviction in your idea and your thoughts. And I think as having started out as quite a young person in this position, I'm not that young anymore, but at the time, I was a lot younger then, kind of having that fear of doing something or saying something, that a bit of a lack of confidence in, will people take me seriously? Will people listen? Will people kind of understanding where I'm coming from? And I think that was probably mistakes I made earlier on, was going with ideas or going with the flow. And actually the amount of times now I'm thinking, oh, if I did that differently, it's something that I thought in my head, but I didn't vocalize it, or I didn't push for something to be different when I knew it was the right thing, because there were so many experienced people around the table who were saying one thing. I think that's absolutely imperative, that, you know, people really have conviction in what they're doing.
So if you were talking to a junior designer that was looking for mentorship, what's one bit of advice you would give them?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
If you think about something that you want to do and you think it's right and you want to test an idea, things fail. You know, we've done projects, the amount of times, even the most simplest thing, you pick a paint colour, put it on the wall, and you're like, that looks shit. I don't like it, we're changing the paint. That's a very, very small mistake, but it's fine, you know? It's not life or death situation, that you can challenge it. And the only being safe is not a way to improve as a designer. And things aren't always going to work. And you might put two things together and go, that really is not working out how I thought it would. You might see samples and it doesn't translate into the idea, but that's all part of it.
Yeah.
And nothing can't be changed. It's not there forever. It's, you know, something that you can revisit and come back to. So I would say absolutely confidence. I think I would also draw inspiration from everywhere. You know, I think the more relaxed you are, it comes back to well-being. Going for a walk, I get all of my ideas, you know, at the gym, or I never have a good idea sitting at my desk because I'm busy doing the operational side of the role, keeping the show on the road. But actually, ideas come from different places. So it's about being healthy, having activities, doing things that you like. The amount of times we've got people WhatsApp me on the weekend and they'll be like, have you seen, look how cool this is, do you like this? I even had last week a quantity surveyor message me something and he was like, I saw this, do you like it? And it's about that, it's sharing, you know. Their expertise is in design, but they saw something that inspired them. They sent it through to the group. And living your life not focusing on design, but just absorbing the world you're in, you know. There's things, fashion, anything. If you're in a pub and you like something nice, you know, listening to people, understanding, and taking that forward. And don't be afraid to take risks. Be bold, because 90% of the time, you know, risks pay off if there's a very valid reason why you've done something.
Yeah. I think it's easy because design's very personal. It's very attached to you personally. You've actually really put a lot of heart and soul and consideration into that. And then you're kind of expressing your personal feelings in a physical form that people can then talk about and pick apart, which is, you feel very vulnerable, right?
True.
You can do.
Yeah.
And so I think...
And I would say that as well. It's not personal. If somebody comes in and they say, I hate that colour, it's not personal. It's not, okay, no problem. Tell me why. Let's go in a different direction. That's the part of the great part about being a designer, that it's really not personal. They're not saying, I don't like you, you're terrible at your job, you've got no style, I don't like you. It's not an assassination on anyone. It's just they don't like that colour.
Yeah.
And often you'll get clients can't communicate sometimes what they mean. So they might say one thing and then you might show them what they're describing and then you realise, or they realise, that's not what they mean. And that's fine. It's not an attack on you as a person. So to take it as it comes, you know, that it works. Yeah, I've had loads of times people are like, don't like that at all. And I'm like, God, I love that one, you know. But it's really important, I think, particularly in our office, there's designs, we make changes, we comment. I oversee everything that goes out the door from a design point of view. Some of it, I wouldn't have it in my own house. I wouldn't have it in my own kitchen. But it's so important to let all of the team be creative and do what they want to do and not stamp over what someone's doing, not micromanaging, not saying, no, that's not what happens here. The amount of times we get CGIs done from the incredible CGI artists in the office, and they'll say, we did too. And I'll always just say to the designer, whoever, say, what's your favourite one? And they're like, oh, I'm like, I'm not answering. Which one do you prefer? And they'll all go, that one. I said, well, that's the one you present to your client because it's your job and it's your project.
And you've got to be passionate.
And it's not up to me, you know. If you're responding to their brief, if you're delivering on something, an idea that you discussed with them, it's not my place to say. I think we're known for being bold, creative, colourful, different, unique, but no two projects are the same. And that's down to people being able to do what they want to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you very much. And I think that wraps up this episode. So thank you very much, Étain.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you joining, and some great insights around your career trajectory and everything. It's been really interesting from a leadership role and a key influencer in the workspace design, and then around obviously the place and the planet and how we impact that, and the people and how they feel and engage in the space. So it's been really insightful, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your cider.
You're very
that
welcome.
You've given us. Love it.
You're very welcome.
Cheers.